Hi, it's Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. I want to share with you some books I've been reading recently, but first of all I'm going to share with you the books I'm currently reading because there's a couple of those and I wanted to get this video out without waiting to finish all of my books. But I'm currently reading Meet Me at the Grand by Lindsey Harrel. This is a contemporary romance. I thought it was going to be Christian, but so far it's just been clean fiction and there's not been any Christian content in there. And yeah, it is following Danny, who is trying to, who's living on this island called Jonathan Island, which has lost a lot of tourists and a lot of the life's gone out of it. A lot of people have moved away, and she's hoping by rehabilitating or doing this hotel that it will get tourism back in, people will come back in, and her family will want to come move back into the area, etc. And so her uncle gets in somebody from the city to come and revamp this hotel, but his ideas are very different to her own. He's very modern, she's very historical minded, and they've got to work together. Yeah, I'm slow going with this one, so it's taken me a while. I'm just reading a little bit at a time. Like I say, I haven't found any Christian content yet, but I'll let you know how I get on with it if I get to the end. I'll let you know what it was like. And then I'm also just started or about to start reading Cloaked in Beauty by Karen Witemeyer. This is book 3 in the Texas Ever After series, and it is set in Texas, obviously. I forget the sort of time period exactly. 1881. And this is following Letty, who, well, at the beginning of the book so far, she's just a child. So I don't know much about it so far, but it is like a Texas historical romance retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. I think it might be mixed with something else as well, but yeah. Again, I'll tell you how I get on with that when I've finished reading, but I thought you might like to know what I'm currently reading. I've done some book reviews as I've been going along for the books that I finished, so these are my thoughts on those books. I finished listening to the dramatised version of The Hobbit, which is something that I listened to when I was a teenager many years ago, and it was an old favourite of mine, so I now have the music going round and round in my head that they play in that one because I was so familiar with it then. It is a BBC radio adaptation, I think, of The Hobbit. It is full cast and it's an abridged version really, so it's shortened down into a short space of time. So rather than the film version, which expands the whole film, the book into 3 films, this one shortens it down into a shorter time, although I guess still it would make a very long film. It is obviously a classic novel, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, just to say that I enjoyed the version of it, listening to it again. It is a fantasy novel. It is clean in terms of most adult content. There are some issues, I guess, with some of the fantasy elements in terms of sort of saying spells, but they're not called spells, so it's just about on the okay side for me in terms of that kind of thing. And yeah, it was great to revisit an old favourite that used to be a favourite for me years ago. So I would give this version of The Hobbit 8 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating, and 0 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. Although I believe that Tolkien was a Christian, I don't find any Christian content in The Hobbit. And as I said, there is some magic in there which could be taken either way. I finished reading A Noble Masquerade by Kristi and Hunter. Thank you to those who recommended this book in a previous video. I was talking about authors that I would like to read for the first time. This book was recommended to me. It is sort of, I think it's Regency type of time, and it's following Lady Miranda Hawthorne, who is in her fourth season and looking for a husband. So she is going into the season going to balls, going to parties, different things, trying to find a husband. She would really like to marry for love and not for money. She seems to have found that a lot of the men who want to marry her only want her for a dowry, and so that's why she hasn't married so far. But this year her younger sister is coming out and is also going to be sort of competing with her, and she feels very sort of nervous about that, insecure about that, but still at the same time wanting to marry for love. And during this sort of time preparing for that, her brother gets a new valet who Lady Miranda rather likes. He has some secrets around him, and she keeps bumping into him. There's some things about him that she's very attracted to, but things she's not sure about. And she's also like a lady, can't really start a relationship with a valet. And she has for years been pouring out her feelings in this kind of anonymous letters, which she never sends, but she writes letters to her brother's best friend, who she's heard about from his time at school and sort of had an imaginary crush on, I guess, but she writes to him as if she's writing to him, and then she hides the letters under her bed. But this valet, Marlowe, one day says that he's posted one of those letters to her brother's friend, and then her brother's friend actually replies. So she is in this kind of quandary of does she try to get to know this brother's friend? Can she get to know this valet? And there are secrets going on. There's things that are an investigation sort of going on, a mystery investigation sort of thing going on in the background. It's really historical romance with a bit of suspense, mystery in as a subplot to the book, and I enjoyed it a lot. It doesn't have a huge amount of Christian fiction that I can remember, so I would probably give about 1.5 out of 3 for Christian faith, but it was an enjoyable book and an enjoyable romance. So I would give it 8.5 out of 10 for my story enjoyment rating. There's quite a lot going on. It does have some high action suspense times in it, as well as like romance and character interactions, and the time period is something that I enjoy. It's fairly upbeat as a story, and yeah, I enjoyed listening to that one. I finished reading Once a Queen by Sarah Arthur. This is a Christian fantasy story. A lot of it is set in this kind of world. In this first book, I feel like some of the next books might have even more set in a fantasy world. It is a portal fantasy story, and it has a lot of references back to the Chronicles of Narnia. So this, I think it is the young adult series, and this one is following 14-year-old Eva, who is finding herself spending the summer in her grandmother's kind of country estate in England. She has been living in America with her mum and her dad, who are both academics, who have been working at universities and studying at universities, trying to get jobs, academic jobs. And for the summer she comes over to England. She's never met this grandmother before. Her mum has never been home for a very long time, and there are also all sorts of strained relationships there, and old secrets that are to do with this family. There is, as I say, is a portal fantasy story. We probably get more of that, I reckon, in following books, but this is the start of that story. And as I say, there's a lot of references to things that come out of the Chronicles of Narnia. So I don't want to explain too much about that. This book is not a sequel to the Chronicles of Narnia, and yet there's so many references to it. It probably could be, it made me think of that. It kind of was. The story is following Eva, and as she's discovering the secrets about her family, both the personal ones and the more fantastical ones, she's also exploring, whether there could be other worlds other than our own. She's making new friends there, and keeping secrets, being told to keep secrets, learning people's secrets, trying to discover secrets. There are a lot of mystery elements to the book, especially the sort of that based in this world, and as well as working out how the fantastical elements are woven into the story. I enjoyed this one a lot. I found some of it a little bit vague in terms of the fantasy elements, and I would like to see a bit more concrete details to the world as we're exploring it, but maybe get that more in the later books. And there's definitely 3 books. I'm not sure if there'll be more than that. The second book is already out. The third book is coming out next January, I think. Yeah, it was a fun young adult contemporary with a bit of mystery, with some fantasy elements woven into it, and mostly friendship, not big on romance, mostly friendship. So I am interested to see where the series is going to go, especially as there's like a lot of elements that sort of hark back to the Chronicles of Narnia. This one had quite a few that fitted with the Magician's Nephew, the beginning book, which makes me wonder if there's going to be several books in this series or whether there'll just be 3 books, like a trilogy. But it was definitely worth picking up and finding out about. I haven't heard much about this book before I picked it up. The description on the back of the book actually goes into quite a bit more details about the story, but I don't want to give away too much for those who don't want too many spoilers to the plot. So I would give it 8.5 out of 10 for story enjoyment rating, and 2 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. There is sort of references in this world to going to church and faith briefly, but there's also quite a lot of symbolic references to faith that you have to sort of extrapolate from the fantasy elements of it. So there's allegory in there, but it's not explained, but I can see it there very clearly myself as a Christian. So I finished listening to the Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings by JRR Tolkien. This is the dramatised version that I've been listening to. As you can see, I've been listening to the radio dramatisations of different novels, classic novels mostly, and these are ones that I am very familiar with from years and years ago, maybe my teenage years, 20 years plus ago. They are full cast dramatisations of the novels. So I think this one is about 4 hours, maybe a bit longer. So it's almost like watching the film. In fact, it's a little bit longer than the film. But it's like a sort of cross between listening to an audiobook and the film version. And I remembered all the scary bits of the scary voices of these ones, and I was like, oh, do I want to listen to these again? But once I started listening to it, I was able to recollect and remember all of the sort of upbeat bits and the funny bits and all the character interactions. And this book wasn't as dark as I remember them being, so maybe the second and third books get a bit more dark how I remember them. But this one was definitely upbeat story. And of course, if you're not familiar with The Lord of the Rings, it's about Frodo, who is passed a ring of power by his uncle. It's his uncle, I think, Bilbo, who found a ring years ago, and all he knows about it is it makes you invisible when you put it on. It's a magical ring, but as he finds out, there's something much greater to it, and it's much darker, and he needs to go on a quest to get rid of it for the safety of the whole world. And that's pretty, big story, very well known. I definitely enjoyed this version of it. I loved hearing all the different characters in it. I love that Ian Holm, who plays Bilbo in the films, is the voice for Frodo Baggins in this version. So when he was younger, in I can't remember when this was recorded, 1981. So it's quite a long time ago, but it feels very fresh still, and it certainly feels sort of up to date. The story is obviously the same. They cut out the bits that you would expect them to cut out of the book, similar to how the film works, but maybe a little bit more details, and it doesn't change bits. It sticks much more closely to the original story, whereas the film did add in bits or change bits just to make it more film-like. So yeah, I give this one a 10 out of 10. For story enjoyment, Christian faith rating, not really anything specifically Christian faith in this book, even though Tolkien was a Christian as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it doesn't have any obvious things. Although I have seen books where they pull out biblical topics and study into Tolkien's writings. But I would say this is more of a clean fiction. So I give it 0 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. It's clean. The magic in this particular first one seems to be okay, unless you really don't like anything to do with wizards and anything magical at all. But for me, it doesn't feel like overly dark, and the dark feels dark and the light feels light. So I'm okay with that. So those are the books that I've been reading recently. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or listened to them, and what you thought of them, and what your favourite book has been that you've read recently. Okay, I hope you're having a fantastic reading week, and until next time, I pray God bless you and your families. Okay, bye!